I'd like to call to order the Rutherford County School System May 7th work session. We're going to have the Pledge of Allegiance from Ms. Frances Rosales.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As we go to a moment of silence, we would like to offer our sympathy to the family of Jack Miller, Rutherford County School bus driver of Bus 206, who passed away from a heart attack last weekend. Thank you. Direct your attention to the agenda. Do we have any comments, questions from anyone? Dr. Sullivan, you have something to say?
Yeah, so we have some updated numbers. So we are part of the Rutherford County Consolidated Government, and so we just got our updated revenue forms. And so if there's a little carryover between the forms that you are seeing online compared to the forms we have, the numbers, we will explain all of those, and then they will all be uploaded by midday tomorrow. But those are just kind of an update of where we are for revenue. We don't set our own revenues.
Okay. Anyone else?
Ms. Bratton?
Yes, ma'am.
Is this where we can make changes to the minutes as well? This discussion, or do I have to wait for another?
It's the consent agenda that we do, because see, we've got the board meeting down there on consent. That's okay. I've done it wrong myself, I understand. It's okay. Anyone else have a question? Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Sullivan, would now be a good time to have Dr. Chastain talk about the different renewals?
I was going to move to that next. As soon as we get past this agenda, then to the consent agenda, because we got quite a few things.
Oh, we're just on the agenda part right now.
Yeah. It's okay.
We're all having a moment.
Just a tiny little moment. That's okay.
That'll be fine.
We got it. All right. Now, we're going to take a look at the consent agenda. Ms. Rosales.
Thank you. So it was brought to my attention that in the minutes, in the part for the public comments, there is a statement with Ms. Christy Crossland, and to be noted and to be included is that, wait a second. To be noted, to be included is to add that she believes it's a breach of contract due to the reporting of information that is available through the GPS system. That was a comment that was made, and she will like for that to be reflected on the minutes as well. Do I need to repeat it again?
No, but don't. Yeah, I was going to ask you. That's what I was going to ask, if she could email that. Thank you. Anyone else have comment or question on the consent agenda?
Couple quick things to point out.
Okay.
I know that Mrs. Darby just mentioned, I'm going to ask Dr. Chastain to go over some of our just yearly renewals that we have for the curriculum and instruction, and then just some usage statistics as well. But before we get to that, a couple things. One is under nepotism. So I just got off the phone with two principals. We have Kristen Boynton, who is the assistant principal at Siegel Middle School, is going to accept a position at Oakland High School as an assistant principal. Her husband teaches there, and so they have to make sure that they don't have any type of supervisory duties that happens in the district. And so you just don't assign her to observe or handle any discipline out of her spouse's classroom.
Who was that again?
Kristen Boynton.
Kristen Boynton.
She was a former teacher at Oakland High School and dean. And then under use of facilities, at the Special Olympics today, was contacted. Murfreesboro Parks and Rec is requesting to use Blackman High School's track on certain dates that I'll have updated on the agenda, but it actually starts this week. Already on there? You are amazing. Man.
Good job.
Great job, Dawn. Never mind. So it's there.
He's Speedo.
Yep.
Speeding on the salads.
Okay, so Kristen Boynton is to Oakland High School from Siegel Middle
For nepotism.
as assistant principal. Okay.
And then Dr. Chastain, you want to go over statistics?
Trying to follow along here, and I'm not really sure where to start.
Padlet.
Okay, we'll start with Padlet. They're in a different order. So Padlet is, as you see, $8,800. That is a renewal. It's gone up because we have used it a lot more. It's used in our elementary schools by our specialists to organize all of the curriculum guides and resources as one of many examples. So that is a district-wide license. Hold, please. I'm going to get to the usage. So the analytics for just from May 2023 to May 2024, there have been over 1.8 million posts or usage of Padlet. So I would say that's probably one that is highly used and worth, all of these I would say are worth the renewal. We've cut where we need to cut. Edgenuity, you will see that's a huge piece of what we offer as a district in credit recovery and what we offer to the JDC. So that is the online program that we utilize to make sure students are able to get credits where there's in unique situations. Credit recovery is probably the biggest one that we use Edgenuity for, as well as adult high school. And if any of these, as I'm going through, if you want to know a specific number, I'm flipping through this usage report. Schoology. So Schoology is what we consider our learning management system. So it's a way for us to organize courses. Our teachers use it to kind of take what is digitally offered through textbooks and other materials and organize it in a way where it is offered based on our scope and sequence. So it's teacher pages, it links with Clever, it also sends out parent communications. So it is essentially just an organizational learning management tool that integrates all of our materials, along with teacher-created materials. It allows us to offer a situation we're dealing with today. A student may go to an alternative school and we don't have maybe a particular CTE class that is taught at Smyrna West or Daniel McKee, and Schoology allows the homeschool teacher to still provide the resources for the student that's in that unique situation. So that is Schoology. So that's a higher dollar figure because it serves all of our schools. And I know we have usage on that as well. In hindsight, I probably should have gone in the order that I had these in.
And I hate to go back to 2020, but that is what we used as part of our learning management system during COVID that replaced what we tried to have with Kidem that did not go well whatsoever. And I tried to never ever say that word out loud again, but once a year it seems like it keeps coming back.
So for Schoology, the total submissions were over nearly 100,000. Course materials created, 745,878. So it has been fully adopted within our schools, and our teachers are using it. PlayPosit is I'm going to start putting these in alphabetical order moving forward, just so you know. So WeVideo PlayPosit, so that's an interactive video studio that teachers use for PD, digital instruction. Administrators, instructional coaches create video content. We have since last August, there are 7,000 instructors that are using it, over 10,000 active students, over 23,000 engagement hours. So not as highly used as some of our others, but still used in instruction. Follett, that's our library management system, so that's what allows us to be able to pull reports and know what we have in all of our libraries. Zoom, I think everybody's familiar with. Please don't take that away. Dino is our is a program that allows, since we have devices throughout our schools, it allows teachers to make sure they are monitoring what students are viewing and seeing on our school-issued devices while in the classroom. So for instance, if they're giving a test or they have them on an assignment, that it allows the teacher to see on a screen that they are actually searching materials that are appropriate for the assignment, or if in a test situation that it allows us to kind of lock down so they just can do the test. Gale in Context Science is a program that allows science teachers to have access to research materials and journal articles. And let's see, Moby Max. So usage report for Moby Max, which is a personalized learning program, that's just used in K-8. So skill-based lessons, we've used this for over 10 years and the price has remained relatively the same, so we're appreciative of that. And it has district totals, over 25,000 students are using it. They've done over 8 million problems, over 27,000 assessments. So high usage, especially if you're just looking at K-8. Nearpod is another one that has really gained a lot of popularity from our teachers and our staff here. It allows us to take materials from other places and put it in a kind of a online instructional sequence. So it's kind of like a PowerPoint that you add materials into, and it allows you to put questions in there and a quiz where a student can kind of do that as a self-paced assignment. So again, trying to meet students where they are. It can be used at home, in the classroom, alternative schools, wherever it may be. And let me get the usage for that, since that's a higher dollar amount. It is. And there are over 1 million submissions that have been done just in this year from August to May 1st. Over 1,000 active teachers, so that is the majority, a vast majority, over 19,000 sessions, over 438,000 student joins. And I'm also happy to send all this to you. I've got it in an email, so you are more than welcome to see all this. And I think that is all of the ones we have put forth for renewals. In this report, I also have what we've paid over the course of the last 3 years. All of these have been renewed for multiple years. But any questions, happy to answer what I can and find out the answers for what I can't.
Did you
Questions?
have the information on Brain Pop?
Did I skip Brain Pop? I'm sorry. And that was
No,
the
you're
one
fine.
right here in the front. It's the very first one. Yes, so Brain Pop is just used in K-8. They are short videos, and there are assessments at the end of those. A lot of our teachers use those within their core subjects. Let's see. There are...
And while you're bringing that up, I'll add, so the Brain Pop can have a couple videos that cover topics that are not to be discussed in Tennessee against state law, and we have those blocked for us.
Yes. And I would say our instructional technology team has done an excellent job of doing that in any of these cases where there's materials that students can access for sure, but even with teacher access to make sure that our teachers know which ones are standards aligned, that is a big push for us. So over 195,000 total teacher and student logins with Brain Pop, 41 active schools, and again, this is just K-8, so all of our K-8 schools are utilizing this in some way.
Are we still utilizing iReady?
So iReady is a school-by-school purchase.
Okay.
It is not part of our adopted curriculum anymore. So some schools have used that to supplement either ELA or math, but that is a school-based purchase now.
Dr. Sullivan and Dr. Chastain, I was under the impression that last year, well, this school year, we had to adopt iReady for every school because of a change in the Department of Education of what to use, and there was an issue with the vendor. I forget what new vendor we're supposed to be using to replace iReady, and then we went back to iReady. So for the next following academic year, what's the plan if we're going to use something different from the department?
Are you talking about it for a universal screener?
I was under the impression that this year, with iReady specifically, there was a new vendor that was approved that we were going to go with instead of iReady.
Correct. For elementary math? Is
Yes,
that what you're?
elementary,
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay, so this.
That's correct.
So we adopted as a district HMH for math, and it had and I think this is, stop me if this is not what you're asking. It had an online portion, like an online path that was student-driven based on right, wrong, all that. So that was called Waggle. There were a lot of problems with the implementation of Waggle. I will credit our elementary coordinator, Ann Haley, was ferocious in her dealings with the company. We have since fixed that, and we will not be using that anymore. We're going to go with an NWAA MAP assessment, so it's still linked with HMH. They were able to fix that portion in time for us to not have to buy iReady for everyone. Some schools went ahead and purchased it just as a supplement, but we have successfully used Waggle for the remainder of the year as a growth measure. It is called growth measure, as a growth measure for our students to serve as that screener.
And when is that going to be renewed, Waggle?
So that was part of a 6-year adoption because it was part of HMH.
Gotcha.
So, but we're replacing the test portion. So instead of that growth measure, we're replacing it with a much more reputable assessment and are getting that for free because of the issues we had with the implementation.
So what are we using for elementary for ELA?
So English was still part of, we're under the same adoption. So that's it's called EL.
Yeah, okay. I just remember that there was a change, and I couldn't remember exactly, but yeah, it was math with Waggle.
Yes.
And so are we moving away from iReady then?
Yeah, iReady was on the list, but as a district, our teachers chose HMH as part of the curriculum adoption. So last year, this is the first year we have used that. I will say that we've gotten really good feedback on the actual instructional materials. It was just that one digital portion. But overall, I think we're very pleased with how easy it's been to implement the instructional piece in our schools.
Great.
Anyone else have a question? Thank you, Kelly. All right. Public comment will be on Thursday. Guest speaker will be on Thursday night, number 8, Rutherford Proud.
That'll be Thursday night as well.
Also, Thursday night. All right. Let's flip on over. Number 9, instruction.
So these are take-home backpacks for summer camps. Curriculum Instruction would like to purchase take-home backpacks for the upcoming summer camps, June 3rd through 28th, 2024. These take-home backpacks would range from rising kindergarten to rising 5th grade students and will include nonfiction and fiction texts, English language arts, and math workbooks, and a parent engagement guide. These backpacks will be in the amount of $143,450.15 and will be funded with the summer learning camp budget. And we have samples of those as well that we can bring. Do you have them with you? So we'll have those afterwards if you want to look at them. I mean, they're not, there's not a whole lot to them, but at least that way you can see what they look like.
And just as an aside, we have used these previously without any, they've been a good parent resource.
Questions, comments?
Ms. Bratton,
Yes, sir.
about how many students are you expecting?
For summer camp in general?
Yep.
So we aren't quite sure yet because we're still taking the registrations, and a big piece of that is dependent on 3rd grade. So we'll definitely have an update once we get those numbers within the next couple weeks.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Thank you. Number 2, Simon Springs Principal Funding.
So this is a request. The Simon Springs principal is currently serving as assistant principal to Rutherford County Elementary School for the remainder of the 23-24 school year. In order to facilitate the hiring and pre-opening process necessary for a new school, we'd like to add 10 paid days for the summer of 2024 only for a total of $4,903. So assistant principals work 10 days after school, their contract after teachers leave. So this would add 10 days like a principal would, a current principal that allows them to get involved with hiring. I mean, honestly, she's already working 2 jobs anyways for us because she is still serving as the assistant principal and is currently going ahead and operating as the principal of this school, getting hiring done. But this would match what other principals are doing. You'll see in our budget requests that we do the same thing for new schools. Poplar Grove, for example, we normally budget a new school to about a half a year. And so just wanted you to be aware of that. Poplar Hill, Poplar Grove,
Poplar Hill.
Poplar Hill.
Gonna say Poplar.
Poplar.
Been calling
Hill.
it Poplar Grove nonstop. Isn't that a school in Franklin special? Little House on the Prairie. Okay. I don't know that I've ever seen that, but somehow that stuck in my brain. Yes.
Questions? Comments? Number 10, legal.
We have 2 out-of-county transfer students. The board's been requested to admit a transfer student from another school system under discipline. The student was remanded to alternative school for fighting. So according to policy 6.318, the board may deny admissions of any student except those in state custody when a student transfers from another school system while under suspension or expulsion. Recommendation is to admit and place into alternative school. Realistically, we're at the end of the year, so it'll probably start at the beginning of next year.
Into the alternative school? Okay. All right. Number 2.
Number 2 is the board's been requested to admit a transfer student from another school system under discipline. The student was expelled for possession of THC after failing to attend a drug intervention program. According to policy 6.318, the board may deny admission of any student except those in state custody when a student transfers to another school system while under suspension or expulsion. And recommendations to deny in this one.
If you have questions, please direct those to Ms. Ridley. Policy adoption.
And on Thursday, I would like to request that we remove policy 6.3041, Title IX and sexual harassment due to the Title IX lawsuits, legislation, all those different types of things. That would seem best for us to remove that, since it's probably going to have a total rewrite after all the lawsuits are done, regardless of which way it goes. And so I'd just rather keep it as is right now.
Okay.
And happy to go over any of these, change any of these, read all these, whatever you guys want me to do.
Do you want him to read all of these now so he doesn't have to read them on Thursday night? What do y'all want to do? Caleb says like this, so I think that means read them now, and then we can do whatever we need to do on Thursday. Okay.
All right, so policy changes. First one, policy 1.901, charter school applications. This changes the data recommendation and appointment or review team from December to January. B, policy 3.202, emergency preparedness plan, adds training for substitute teachers. C, policy 4.406, use of internet, adds language for additional prohibited and illegal activities for employees and students. D, policy 5.106, application and employment, removes the pre-employment physical examination requirement. E, policy 5.303, personal and professional leave, updates language for personal leave for certified employees. F, policy 5.308, sabbatical leave, updates language for sabbatical leave for certified and classified employees. And again, the recommendation will be to remove G. So H, policy 6.402, physical examinations immunization, adds physical examination requirement for clubs that involve physical exertion or athletic activity. I, policy 6.413, prevention and treatment of sports-related concussions, adds clarifying language for removal from athletics due to a concussion. Then we have 2 new policies. Policy 2.9002, site selection and acquisition. Policy for school site selection and acquisition. Policy 3.2052, school resource officers and nursing staff participation in safety days. Policy for participation of SROs and nursing staff in the safety days annually.
Questions or comments on policies? This will be the second reading of 2 readings. All right. Financial matters.
Oh boy, this is going to be the long portion. John, can I steal the mouse? Think it'll reach over there? We're going to try it. All right, so this is the presentation of our annual budget. So several different things. I think we're going to be good. So these numbers again are going to be updated a little bit. And so you will see the first one, I just see a typo that we need to fix. The general purpose school fund 141-24-25 school year, and we will go through this in as much detail as we need to, answer questions, and I'll kind of go over some highlights. So first, the general purpose school fund is an estimated revenue of $538,434,765. Brian, is it 65 or 69? Gotcha. $65, an expenditure total of $543,812,949 as presented. $538,434,769 is budgeted for the operation cost for the district, which would have presented a mostly balanced budget. Due to having to fund RCS authorized charter schools at the beginning of the fiscal year 24-25, It requires RCS to budget into a deficit and use the fund balance in the amount of $5,378,184. Additionally, this budget proposal was only requiring the legal minimum maintenance of effort from our local funding body. We have received additional about $420,000 over maintenance of effort. I might emailed the board earlier this week or late last week and said we were going to put that into the teacher line item. Unfortunately, that is going to go into the trustees commission. And so when we receive funds, we actually have to pay a percentage of those funds. So we are getting extra money, but it's going right back to the trustee for giving us the extra money. And so it's just a bizarre scenario. You're going to see it as part of our general purpose school budget amendment. We've actually brought in more money, which is going to require us to add more money to what we give back. I know that seems a little crazy, but it's in state law, the percentage that you have to give back to the trustee, and we have to add money to give back to the trustee. So now I'm going to go in detail through Fund 141. Let me scroll on down, way down here. All right, we are going to look at revenue first. And so there's a couple things. Again, we are looking for that $538 million in revenue. When you are looking at this in online or on the TV or on your sheets, there's a couple things to point out. One, I just lost it, John. I just went away. All right. When you were looking at prior year actual end, this is actually 2 years ago is kind of what you were looking at that point. So it's 89 million and you're looking at property tax, 89 million. For this school year, you are looking at 77 million. We've already brought in 78 million, so we're a little bit over. And so next year it is being dropped a little bit, and the number we're really looking at is this first one, current property tax. $75,460,000 is what we're looking at for current property tax. There's a couple things to point out that is a little bit different, and it's lower than this 75 million right here. So we are going to be able to move some pennies from 141 into 177 based on the county finance director's suggestion, what he gives to the county commission budget committee on Thursday. So you're looking at 75 million. It's a reduction from this 75 million by about 400,000. The concern there is that as you start looking at sales tax this year is budgeted at 101 million. He's increasing that to 102 million. And so we do not get a say-so in how the county directs revenue. So how they decide to meet maintenance of effort is totally up to county commission on how they want to set maintenance of effort. I'm a little bit concerned that that sales tax values are continuing to not trend up. And so with them adding an additional million, we just hope that we're able to still meet those numbers, because county maintenance of effort is based on estimates and budgets, not actualization. And so if there's ever a deficit, we have to come up with the rest. And so we're budgeted with an additional $1 million in sales tax. Going through some of the other big funding lines, so you'll see there's 162,000 just in some various places. An area that we help to build our fund balance back with is an investment income. You will see that right now we have budgeted 1.25 million. We have already brought in $4 million in investment income. We had asked, could we use some of that investment income to be able to cover some of our other areas, but that is part of maintenance of effort, and so we don't control what goes into that investment income. And if the economy comes back, then interest rates will drop and we will come back to that 1.25. However, county finance is estimating 1.35 instead of 1.25 this year.
I got a question on that. So if they are forecasting or budgeting lower property tax, raising the sales tax, but the sales tax, if it ain't the current trajectory, if it is not going up like they're assuming that it's going to, then do you think this would be the way that they recover some of that?
And it really wouldn't even be up to them, it'd be up to us to cut costs to meet it. And so this is what we watch in May and June. Our department, we had a leadership meeting Monday and we talked about, I said, unless it's absolutely necessary, until I know what sales tax revenues look like, hold off on anything until we know for sure what sales tax revenue looks like. So, great question.
We're not going to spend any money till we're positive it's there.
And that's normal. I mean, it's operating a business. Don't spend money just because you have the money.
Oh, you think it's
Yep. So that is your 1.35. Again, over time, you don't want to estimate this at 4 million to meet maintenance of effort, because eventually the income rates are going to come down, and then the county would be stuck trying to make up that difference. The other big change, and where the biggest majority of our extra funding came from, is in TISA. So I want to show you the extra. TISA is going from, and I can't remember what page I'm on, sorry. This is page 3 of 5 in revenue. Thank you, Ms. Sharp. So we are looking this year at $322.5 million. We've actually already brought in $324 million. We've brought in a lot more than that. We just haven't budgeted it yet. Next year, we are estimating $342 million. That is coming from students we have added over this school year, and it is from the increase of 3% to the base from $6,860 to $7,075 per student. And so that is truly the only increase that we are having in funding outside of the $400,000 that's going right back to the trustee from the local. All of our additional funding this year is coming from the state. That is going to eventually be a problem, but we're able to make it work this year.
When are we going to get paid for the outcomes?
So we get paid for the outcomes usually November, December, and we do not budget outcomes that allows us to have funding. If we have an HVAC or something go out, it allows us to not use all of our money to budget it right up front.
Sorry about that.
No, you're good. The other thing we do not budget is we do not budget fast growth. So fast growth this year is $7 to $8 million. That could be in jeopardy next year, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So we, to be able to show our additional revenue as part of your cleanup amendment that you'll see in June, we have about $11.8 million that we have not budgeted yet, that we will go back and add to make sure that we don't go over any line items like we did last year, and make sure they are well covered with the additional summer school things. So that brings us to our overall revenue that you get down to the end of page 5, and that is that $538,434,765. So just wanted you all, that's kind of where revenue comes from. Any questions on revenue? It's nice, the money that comes in. All right, so let's go to expenditures, and we'll be able to kind of take these one big area at a time. And if you're looking at expenditures first, the first sheet that you had was just showing you a quick one-page overall document. Now we're going to look at the biggest part of the budget is 71,100. So again, you'll see Fund 141 at the top. We're in 71,100, and we're going to look at the teacher line item. I want to thank Dr. Chastain and our team, because this budget, if we go back to what our priorities were, we're investing in our people, behavior, and then still building and renovations. We had a 2.5% COLA increase, an average 1.6% step increase, and this budget went up 3%. And so together that should have been a 4.1% increase, but we're only going up 3%. So that means we had to cut costs in other areas. And so we cut about $18 million out of proposed expenditures from our different departments, and this is kind of where we landed. The first one you will see, 2 years ago, teachers were $174 million. Now it's $186 million. That's going to go up to about 195-ish as we go through summer school, and you're going to see that number increase here in just a minute with an amendment. Next year's proposal is $197 million. That covers the number of positions. You remember how many it is? 3,869? So 3,869. I'm going to pull that number up. Give me just a second. I can tell you. That is just in regular instruction number of teachers. So let me pull this up real quick so everybody has the exact number. Yeah.
I can't hardly believe it myself, but I said, no, you understand, we are now the biggest employer in Rutherford County. We passed Nissan. I never would have thought that growing up, that we eventually would be the biggest employer.
It's giant. Absolutely. It is a $500 million or more corporation. Will you bring up the summary report, Brian, and that way I can call on you when I'm going over these number of positions? All right, how many teachers we have in 116?
I've got to scroll down, sorry. There's only 3,000 and something, so hold on just a second. Okay, so 71, 100, 116. Just it by itself is 3,012
Okay, in that line.
in that line.
And so that is adding 40 additional growth positions, 25 ESL positions, and 15 general education teachers. So that is what that incorporates.
Dr. Sullivan?
Yep.
I have a question. So,
Do we need more ESL teachers than that? Absolutely. Can I afford them? No, I cannot.
Actually, but thanks for
Yes.
answering.
Go ahead, sorry.
Those were, so last year, we had a few openings in certified staff. How do we land it this year, and how many of those were we still needing to fill on top of the growth positions?
We're in such good shape with our vacant positions. We actually aren't budgeting any vacant positions. They're all true growth positions. The other change that we made, special ed's still our biggest area. The other thing that we did is that because of our salary increases last year, we were able to attract a more experienced teacher pool. And so we used to budget growth positions on a bachelor's in 5 years experience, and now we budget them on a bachelor's in 10 years experience. And so that's a nice change. Great question. The other numbers that you will see is educational assistants. So EAs, we added 5 growth EAs in line 163 for a total of $7.5 million. This year it is $6.8 million. Roughly that we are looking at, and again, that is part due to growth positions, but also the 2.5% COLA increase and the 1.6% step increase. Parts that I think are very important to point out is how much benefits cost. So if you are looking at how much benefits cost, just going down this, we pay $12.8 million in Social Security, $13.6 million in pensions. We have $28 million in medical insurance, and I will tell you that number is holding steady with what we are currently doing. It does not include any increase. We had that discussion in September. We are not budgeting to cover any medical insurance increase next year. So it's part of just, and maybe the state doesn't have any increase. I know the county's not having an increase, so.
what was that last figure you said?
Do what? Sorry.
The insurance, what was the amount?
28 million just in this line alone. And so when you add it all together, it's well over 50. We have 302, 297 plus 5 growth. In line 189, that includes, and I'm sorry I skipped over that includes 20 ROTC positions. So there are no growth ROTC positions. That is just the salary. The local is having to pick up more of the ROTC costs this year from the federal government. The federal government is decreasing how much they're paying for ROTC positions. But that is a valued program, so we gladly will pick up the extra cost. You look at a couple other areas, employer Medicare, so I'm at 212. Line 212 is $3 million. We have increased our sublines because we have actually had a better sub-fill rate. So we're increasing those from $775,000 to $850,000, and then $2.4 million to $2.6. Instructional supplies and materials, and this is one I wanted to point out. If you guys will look at line 471, which is software, it looks like we go from $2.3 million to $1.8 million to 0. That $2.3 million is now in 399. Which is other contracted services, and that is just an accounting thing that Mr. Runyon feels very strongly about, that software are things that you own.
We saved money, good job.
No, we did not. It just moved it. It is literally the $2.3 million just moving. Mr. Runyon feels like software is things that you own, and if we are paying for it every single year, we do not own it. And so he added 2.3 million to that line. So you see it goes from 623 to 2,000,009, and that is just the increase of the $600,000. Instructional supplies and materials, and this is where you'll see that we started cutting things. So 3.2 million is our budget this year. This coming year, it's requested at $3,050,000. That includes money that goes down to schools, so that's not only our instruction department. Textbooks is an area that I am concerned about. So we have a science textbook adoption upcoming. It is $2 million what we have budgeted. For this year, for next year, we're only budgeting 1.5. And so if we, as state law, we have to adopt a science textbook, we do not have to purchase. At our board retreat, we talked about doing open source, which means our specialists actually go through and only talk about creating our content. But if we need to go and we decide that the textbook avenue is the way we want to go, then we will go either to fund balance or potentially use growth money to be able to purchase textbooks. And so that's an area that we'll look at. This doesn't go into a play again until not this coming August. The science textbooks would be needed for August of 2025, so you have next year's budget to be able to take care of things as well, if needed. Last one I wanted to point out is 71-100, 722, regular instruction equipment. This is where we have been doing one-to-one devices for middle and high school in order to balance this budget. This is where we have cut $4 million out of the one-to-one devices for middle school. We have a couple options. One, we already have one grade level purchased, so we have that grade level that we can go ahead and take care of. There may be additional ESSER revenue based on what the state has left after October, and then we also have the option of using growth and outcome funding to address this. But these are conversations we want to have with our district instructional team, our principals and our teachers, but also our board. We feel strongly one-to-one needs to stay in high school to prepare them for college and career. What do we want to do about 2-to-1 as far as devices for middle school students? Our principals feel very strongly about having it, but there are some trade-offs there that we want to make sure. You're going to see this as a continuing conversation across the country of, was one-to-one the right decision to go? I think we were forced to because of COVID, but is it where we want to go? All of that to say, despite the 4.1% average increase in salaries, this year's budget's $273 million. We're only requesting $278 million, and that's just a little bit over a 2.5% increase despite a 4.1% increase in cost. So I can't tell you how many hours we spent working on this one with Dr. Chastain and her department, and we had, just so that everyone knows, we met with all central office via Zoom and all principals last Thursday as well and presented this kind of as an avenue to them so they could see it as well. So I'll answer questions on 71-100 if you have any. It's the biggest portion of our budget. All right, let me keep moving then. The rest of them, alternative instruction. This is an increase. So you will see that we are adding, I believe, 6 teachers to this line. Let me see. It is 37 total teaching positions, 31 current and 6 growth positions. Those 6 growth positions will go to Simon Springs. And then we hope to be able to, whenever we open Westbrook Woods, to be able to use a combination of some current positions to be able to fill that one, but we have some questions about when that's going to open. We are about to go through the wonderful planning process with the city of Murfreesboro, so that is going to take longer than we anticipated. Nice way to say it. Yes. We are not adding any educational assistants. That's 9.5 positions currently in line 163. The biggest increases that you see are the teacher lines and making sure that we had enough to be able to cover. Here's another medical insurance. There's $316,000 in this line for medical insurance. So that is your increase of current budget, 3.1 million to 3.5 million, or for those 6 teaching positions. Questions on that one? All right, next we will move into, where am I moving next? Special education, 71-200. I want to thank Dr. Ralston and her team. Dr. Ralston came in with a huge budget request, rightfully so, when we were open Simon Springs and looking at restructurings and behavior, and she worked tirelessly to put as much of her positions into federal that she possibly could. So you will see increases in teachers. Let me get to special education. And the other area where we had additional is medical insurance. So medical insurance, we're at 4.6, it goes to 5.1. And I'm looking for one area that we cut. Contracts with private agencies on page 3 of 19. That is currently at $2 million. We're hoping to be able, we fund Rutherford Academy out of that. We're still hoping to use Rutherford Academy by having some of those services ourselves with Simon Springs. We're hoping that's going to save some of that additional funding. But other areas that you will see, like right now in 370, we're already at 425,000. We've cut it to 400. We're at 200,000 in line 429. We've cut it to 150. And it's the small things that add up as well. Textbooks, we estimated this year at 449, or line 449 was 40,000. We're cutting it to 25,000. Line 499 is 200,000. We're cutting it to 120. And something as small as other charges, 16,000. We're cutting it to 10. And so we tried to cut every little avenue that we could to make this a balanced budget. And you'll see that that increase went from 44 million to 46. Moving on to career and technical education. So career and technical education has 206 teachers in line 116. And that increase just is with our additional COLA increase in staffing of the 1.6 average increase. As we were going through this line, we work with Tyra to make sure, and you're going to see a big change in this one partially because of the innovative schools model. You'll see that our current budget of what we've spent is $27 million, but that was an infusion of quite a few millions of dollars to innovative schools model. We will go back and put that back into this grant again next year, but for our budgetary purposes, we go back to what is not included in the grant. So it's at $22 million for next year. Attendance is one that I wanted to highlight because if you look percentage-wise, it is a small budget, but it has the biggest increase. And there's a specific reason why. One, we are in 2 different spots. So if you look at supervisor director, we actually have one of these coded differently. So we have one supervisor director, and then we have our former attendance director, Kim Edwards, who is a 100-day contract. Right now, she is coded in 189, which is why you see a decrease in that budget from 136 to 94 and an increase in the other budget. The other reason for the increase is in line 399, other contracted services. This current year, we have a budget of $350 million. No, we don't. $350,000. That would be a lot of money in attendance. $350,000. We are requesting $460,000. The state just got done with a RFP for a new student information system. Our student information system is Skyward. Skyward very well could be the choice that we have next year, but we're honestly looking at another one called EduPoint. Anytime the state goes through a new RFP process, you have to budget for your current year and 6 months of implementation for your next year. So our high school courses start getting built in December and January. Kids start registering and doing course requests in January, February. So you have to operate a year and a half of your different SIS, and so that is what that increase in cost is. So when you add that increase in cost, you're looking at your increase that makes it look like a huge percentage when it's really not.
I have a question. I'm sorry, and I missed it. Line item 72110105.
Yep.
That's 2 positions, right?
Correct. Well, like 1.675. It's 1 in a 100-day contract. All right, moving over to 72120 health services. Line 105 is 2 people as well. Medical personnel are our nurses. So the state came back right at the end of the General Assembly and passed an update to the law that required nurses at 1 to 750 students. And then with their argument, they said this is already included in the TISA base. And so that came in after our budget was already created. That is one of those, I know Ms. Sharp has been very vocal about it, is that it's one of those things that they're just going to continue to say of, oh, we put it in the TISA base, we put it in the TISA base. And so if you aren't at 1 to 750, you just have to say why. And so my response is going to be, this was not included in the TISA base, and we already had our budget completed. We are only about 3 positions away from being 1 to 750. And so we are very close. We just, when we're cutting, we were looking to find ways that we absolutely, it was an additional request to add. The other portion that you'll look that has an increase is line 735 health equipment. We are adding additional and updating our AEDs to make more of them in the buildings. So that's a 53,000 to 91,000. Scrolling on down to, thank you guys for staying with me. I know this is just riveting. 72,130 other student support. This is where, and I should have highlighted this earlier for anybody watching, anything on 71, if you see the number that starts with a 71, that is direct instruction. If it's 72, that is support. And so not direct instruction on students. So 72 other student support. This is where school counselors, school psychologists, social workers, and just some additional areas come from. In 72,130, we have 11 behavior specialists in here, so there's conversations a little bit around ESSER. We have 11 behavior specialists moving over here, 1 at-risk coach. Our county athletic director is here, our attendance, our 8 graduation coaches. Trying to think what else we have. 8 EAs, our safe schools coordinator, and then moved our safe schools assistant from ESSER into these lines. So if you see 189 other salaries and wages, that's what the other salaries and wages holds. And another one that you'll see an increase, and it's not a huge increase, but is where the medical insurance starts to add up, is 1.5 million to 1.7. Looking at 72,210, this is where our instruction department comes from, of our central office staff up here, and also librarian/media specialist. We don't have any growth positions in these lines. The only thing that we are looking at is additional, let me see, in 189. This is where some of our ESSER positions roll into. And then in medical insurance, you'll see another increase from 1.36 to 1.4, so not a huge increase, but some. Trying to see if there's anything else that just stood out. When you were adding that percentage COLA increase, this year's budget was at 14.6, and now it's at 15.7. That percentage increase is really just following what our COLA increases were. Alternative instruction, this is, let me scroll over to that one. We have 2 growth assistant principals in this position. So this is 72,215 alternative instruction program. You'll see an increase from 249, and then it moves over to 464. These are our 2 growth positions for Simon Springs and then Westbrook Woods Academy. These are where our 2 school principals are at, so that was a conversation that we wanted to make sure that those principals were in there. Those are our 2 growth positions. We have 1 guidance personnel in line 123 that is a growth position, and we had to move an additional guidance position from Roy Waldron School over into this line, so we only actually had to add 1. And then sure I've got the right position. In 189, other salaries and wages, you see an increase from 459 to 525. We've moved some positions around, and then we are adding 2 assistant principals, 1 for each school. So 1 assistant principal for Simon Springs and 1 for Westbrooks Woods. We are going to hold off on hiring Westbrooks Woods until we know a little bit more with the city. We just found out that we are being requested to go through a traffic study on that itty-bitty facility of 814 South Church Street to hold 60 to 100 kids, and that is going to slow us down tremendously. Floodplain, what other kind of stuff, Trey? Those are the main 2, right? Yep. So, just continuing those fun conversations. And that one increased from 1.3 million to 1.8, again, due to the growth positions. Special education program, these are our special education staff that work out of our central office. You have medical personnel here as well. And so when you're looking at these medical personnel, you are looking at your physical therapists, your occupational therapists, your certified occupational therapist assistants. And we went through and really worked with Andy to make sure anything that we could put into federal, we put into federal here as well. And again, you'll see small minor cuts. Other supplies and materials, 100,000, we cut it to 60. This budget is already at 42,000, we cut it to 35, and 30,000, cutting it to 25. So truly anywhere that we possibly could cut 5 to 10,000, we cut. Moving into career and technical education. So this is, again, we're at a 72 number. So these are our support staff here at the central office. This budget actually decreased a little bit from where we are already. Our original budget this year was 596. It's already up to 764. We're dropping it back down to 712. Some of that is because of Innovative Schools model grants, but you'll see just some overall small decreases as well. Next one is a big increase, so 72,250, and this is one that could increase even more, but we are trying to be as fiscally responsible as possible. We have our computer programmer personnel, and so we are moving a couple. I think we had 3 computer programmers that we are moving from ESSER into this position. And just so in case anybody questions, I know it's been a lot of topic on the news about how are districts being able to cover their ESSER cliff if they hired a whole lot of positions. We have been budgeting our ESSER positions for 3 years. And so it was a strategic way for us to be able to make sure that we invested in our people, but if it was sustainable, then we didn't want to hire them from the beginning. A great example were our computer personnel and our school psychologists. So at the beginning of COVID, we hired 9 school psychologists and 9 computer programmers. And the last 3 years, we have added 3 of those from ESSER so that it could be sustainable, but also so that we could utilize those personnel at the very beginning of COVID so that we had them in place. But a couple areas that are definitely increases and areas that we're going to continue to have to increase is that when we are, where did I go? Lost my spot. There we go. Technology. So some of the increases you're going to start seeing is in some of our software. Actually, this is one of Brian's coding things again. Other equipment with our other supplies and materials, we've cut these as much as possible. I think the one that blew me away was that all of our internet access points, it's about $500,000 a year to be able to have the contract for our access points. So if you want your internet access points in our buildings, we pay about $500,000 in service fees a year to be able to use those. And so though, as we have added technology, we have a great infrastructure, but the recurring cost on that infrastructure is just continuing. Trey, I know this is your area. I butchered that. What else do you want to add to that?
That's the thing, the one-to-one, that really jumped us the last few years. When we went to one-to-one and provide all these devices, you have reoccurring fees. And as we continue to grow, we add more devices, which adds more fees. Some of those we were able to buy in bulk early on. A few years back, we were able to buy ahead. So that kind of helped us the last couple of years, but we've caught up. So it's basically growth. It's basically what the addition is. Plus, the world in which we live continues to evolve in not so friendly ways. So some of our protective devices and the things that we use to protect our internet and security things, they've increased too. We're fortunate. We're ahead of the curve in most school districts. We continue to have little nuisances that attack us, but we have daily attacks that we address. So we're still ahead of the curve.
So that's a lot of what that infrastructure goes to. I mean, you see $1 million in other contracted services from $300,000 this year, and so that's just where some of those increases come from. And as we get to technology, as we continue to evolve, those costs are going to continue to go up. 72,260, we do not have a line. We transitioned the adult program to state grants a couple years ago, so we don't have that option anymore. Board of Education had a decrease. The decrease is largely in medical insurance, and I want you to see in line 207, Last year, we spent 2.5 million. This year, not knowing what medical insurance was going to look like, we budgeted 3.6. We've only spent 900,000 so far, and so we're recommended to go back to that 2.5. So when you see a line increase in Board of Education, that's where it goes to. And for anybody watching that is not medical insurance for our board members, I believe that's our retiree line. Is that correct? Yes. I knew that question was going to be thrown out there. Legal services, so we are involved in, as a big district, multiple pending litigations at any time, so our legal fees continue to increase. And as we looked at other areas, the other one that is a huge increase is liability insurance. And so I'm on page 11 of 19. If you look at liability insurance, it's gone from 789,000, and we're now budgeting it to 300 or 850. This one is the one I mentioned earlier, which is my absolute favorite. So thank you for giving us the money, and now we will pay you for collecting the money. So it is 3.2 million. You will see we have already spent, I hate to say spent, but they've already taken 2.8 million this year for giving us our funding. So we're going to have to put more money into this, and thank you for our funding. And next year we are budgeting 3.5 million. So about 0.5% of our budget goes to collect the funding that we are given, which has been a learning experience for me and one that I have a hard time accepting, but it's in state law, so I'm just going to accept it.
Dr. Sullivan?
Yeah.
The legal services,
Yep.
is that Mr. Reed, or is that Mr. Reed, Ms. Ridley, and?
No, that is Mr. Reed and Mr. Reed's firm, and we've increased it because of the litigation we have around transportation right now. All right, then you move into Director of Schools. That has myself and Dr. Martin. Secretary, I believe, has 2 other salaries and wages. And what is good to know under Director of Schools, when we did our change a couple years ago with our, gone blank, it's not the flow chart, the organizational chart, that's the word. I moved communications and legal underneath me, and so that's where in 189 other salaries and wages, you have legal and communications, their entire teams are underneath the Director of Schools. Medical insurance, again, you'll see communication is at 100,000. We cut anywhere that we possibly could, so we have other contracted services at 140,000. We're budgeting it down to 100 this year. And a couple other ones. I'm trying to see if there's any other increases. 307 communication. Can you pull up what's charged out of there? Can I come back to that one while he pulls a PO just to see what exactly is being, because you have to connect to the county server to pull that up, don't you? Yeah, that's going to take a minute. Yeah, we'll come back to that one. The next one are our principal lines, and so you will see principal lines. We have a half a growth position for Poplar Hill. So it is to 48.5, and I know that you're thinking we have 50 schools, and we do, but alternative school, again, they are funded in alternative education. So these are our general education principals. We have half of a growth position for Poplar Hill. Usually we post that position in November, and they start in February. We have a assistant principal position at 0.0725. Basically, they're working 20 days. So that the assistant principal has to have some days to be able to fill in, and then we budget half a position for a secretary to add for Poplar Hill as well in this position. All school secretaries are in this line under 161. All bookkeepers are in this line under 119, which includes 53 positions. And then you have additional clerical positions under 162. No growth positions there, it's just 74 positions. And then you will kind of go down and scroll and see where we tried to, I think this was one we cut little spots as well. Yeah, administrative equipment. So if any principal wants a computer this year, we can buy 4 of them, and that is it. This year we spent $99,000. The budget was $70,000, so we'll have to go back and add funding to that, and we're cutting it to $20,000. So our 4 new administrators will get a computer. No one else gets one. So that is how we will operate that budget. Fiscal services, this is Mr. Runyon's department, and so this has, let me see how many people this has in it. 3 positions in supervisor director. Bookkeepers, accountants in the central office has 13 with 1 growth. Purchasing personnel has 2 positions. And then what I always like to call out, and I should have called this out earlier, is that retirement. You see things on retirement that says, the state supports our retirement, and they do by not making changes to it. But we pay a huge portion for retirement, and the state gives us what those rates are every single year. And so if I went back to 71-100, I think it was $10 to $12 million we put into retirement, and that comes out of our benefits, and it is in every one of our line items that we have. And so that budget increase from 1.8 to 2.1 for the growth position, and then just the increase in salary. Supervisor Director or Human Resources, we have a growth position in this as a benefits coordinator. As we continue to look at our insurance benefits, we want to make sure that we are doing what we need to. So we have a growth position as a benefits coordinator here, and that'll hopefully help us be able to really get what Mr. Young stepped out. When he talks about insurance, and I've mentioned to you all making sure we stay sustainable with insurance, whether that is people that are on the highest plan, they have to pay up to get to that plan like other districts do. Right now, our medical insurance is about 10% of our budget. It's right over 9%, and that's something that we have to look at. How do we make that sustainable for our employees and our district as well? So that is that growth position. And so the salary is an increase, and that pretty much covers that growth. Operation of plant is good for everyone to see. We have an increase from $8 million of this year, originally 2 years ago, to $9.9 million to $10.1 million. We are not recommending adding any growth custodian positions, but it's keeping those and making sure we have that 4.1% average increase in salary. You'll see an area that we have to increase is medical insurance yet again. But what is good for the community to see is just electricity. Electricity is $12.4 million. And that is what I've started talking to the county commission about, is that we have done a great job trying to have a balanced budget for 2 years. But during that time, we will have added almost 5,000 students from the last time that the funding was changed from the local revenue. And electricity, all those things have increased, and we haven't received any extra funding. And unfortunately, that kind of comes to a head next year to where we have to have additional revenue, or we have to cut things. And I think the county commission is going to run to that same exact thing with how they operate. But here's a great example. Electricity 2 years ago was 11.2 million. Now it's at 12.4. Natural gas 1.4 to 1.5. Water and sewer 1.6 to 1.9. And here is a huge change that you can see how much insurance has increased. This is building insurance has gone from $897,000 to $2 million to $2.7 million. And we do not set this number. The county finance office gives us that number. Insurance is
on skyrocket.
And so during all that time, our local funding has still stayed the same. So we have to pick that up in the budget by making cuts to places. And so that's where I said last year was lean. This is extremely lean.
Dr. Sullivan?
Yep.
There's been a lot of conversation about changing the lighting.
Yep.
I was it the LED light?
We'll get to that in Fund 177 in just a little while.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Okay, good.
Almost there. This is where you're going to see a decrease, and this is going to hurt us in some places. Being able to, the last couple years, we've tried to tackle school-based projects as much as we possibly could. We gave each school up to $50,000 to $60,000. We're still going to cover quite a few projects, but if prices continue to increase, we increased it this year to $1.7 million. We have dropped it to $1 million to be able to try to balance our budget. We've moved some of that money around a little bit. So let me get to the next line. I think that's in maintenance of equipment next. Operation of plant and maintenance of plant somewhat run together, and we can use those funds kind of simultaneously to move them around. So here's a couple places where they increase, is that we had 504,000, we're up to 900,000, but here's an area again where it decreases, 1.6, 2.2, back to 1.4. Other contracted services, 1.6, 2.2, back to 1, sorry, I just read that one. 1.2 to 1.8, staying at 1.8. And so we haven't been able to increase those as much as we have some other ones that we would like to. Transportation is another one. We've talked about this 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, is that transportation used to be its own supplement under BEP, so you would receive funding under BEP. Now it is rolled as one of those things that is just rolled into the base of TISA, so districts receive the same amount of funding whether or not they have transportation or don't have transportation. And what you'll see is the price of contractors is the big one, which is where our bus contractors are. It's gone from 24.4 to 25.3 to this coming year 27.1. And our contractors in that contract, they have a 3% annual increase plus adding additional routes. And so it is 27.1 million. And again, that's a valuable service, but that is a service that is no longer reimbursed from the state. And I think that's good for our community to understand, as that we continue to want these services cost money. And as we look to that, those are things that we have to look at. And so that overall budget in transportation is 30.2 million. And looking at other charges, and that's a very small one, community services, early childhood education. Early childhood education is a mixture of voluntary pre-K and integrated pre-K. You have career ladder, you have educational assistance, Social Security, pensions, life insurance, medical insurance. Again, this is an area that we are increasing. And one of the big things I want to highlight on this as we continue to talk about VPK and IPK, we do not budget revenue for our state grant. And so the state will give us, this year they gave us 1.9. We are reducing 3 classrooms. Does that sound right, Dr. Chastain? 3 classrooms. So we're dropping 3 classrooms, so that increase is going to drop, or that state revenue, but we don't budget this as state revenue to give us that option of when state revenue comes in. It gives us that if an HVAC again goes out. We hire teachers with more experience than a 10-year experience. It gives us an avenue to be able to raise additional funds there.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yep.
It might be better asked of you just because we've had this conversation. So looking at this, does this mean that our portion of the VPK is going up next year? Is that correct?
It should still roughly be covered by the grant at about 75%.
But the overall budget has increased.
That, we did do some, I don't know the proper accounting term. We talked at one point about how some of the pre-K, whether it be VPK or IPK teachers, were coded in different lines. Mm-hmm. This includes all of our pre-K staff. So IPK, VPK, whether it's part of that traditional VPK classroom or the inclusion classrooms or the strictly IPK classroom, all of those staff members are in that line. I don't know if that's why it might look like it's more than it was.
Probably. It looks like the increase is strictly, there are no growth positions here. It looks like it's strictly from the 2.5% and the 1.6% increase. Teacher lines went from 2.4 to 2.7, and then EAs went from 1.2 to 1.3.
Are we expecting the grant to be the same amount of money as last year?
And we've already received confirmation of that. Yeah, it should.
Okay. Thank you.
One that may look a little funny to everybody is regular capital outlay. So this one has not had funding in it before in the past. This year we had an additional $900,000, so we put funding into this line. So we still have an additional $375,000 here. The other part that is unique is this where a lot of innovative school model grant went into. So you'll see here we have building construction. That's part of where ISM went into. So we didn't really have like a $9.5 million increase in funding into a certain line. That came from ISM. You'll see that we are decreasing it, so that gives us about $311,000. We used that this year to be able to fund the central magnet mold and issue that we had. That's where that funding came from. We still have loans that we are paying for. That is decreasing every year. What is this? Is this our HVAC units that we did with CMTA several years ago? No, what is it?
It's for, yeah, ESI grants, the state grants. EESI,
Energy Efficient School Initiative, and we haven't done a new one in probably about 8 or 9 years. So most of these are things that we've done 10 to 15 years ago. That's why they're dropping off. The number keeps dropping.
We'll just cover that with what we have to pay the trustee. So we can cover that with what we have to pay the trustee every year, because that's how much it's dropping. And then we've gone from an interest on other loans, a whopping $9,400 to $975. And then you are going to see the other one is, and this strictly came from what we got from the State Department last Thursday. So this is what requires our budget to not be balanced, is the transfer to other funds. If you look this year, it was $34 million. That $34 million, if anybody wants to know exactly what we paid for the Beatty property and, nope, sorry, Poplar Hill, I'm going to get it. Poplar Hill, we paid $34.8 million towards that $60 million project. And so that is showing you what we spent for that project, 34.8. This year, our recommendation is $5,378,179. And so that is so that the funding, and that number may change, it may go up, it may go down, it depends on what happens with charter school enrollment. So we've talked about it a little bit, and I'm hoping that we can get our state delegation support on this, is that we are funded a year behind. In charter schools, we have to estimate funding up front. And sure, all those students may not show up, but we have to budget like they're going to show up. And so that is what that state and local revenue number looks like. We have a call with the State Department on Thursday. So if you think about charter schools, there's two different areas. You have the Tennessee Charter School Commission, which authorized Rutherford Collegiate Prep. And then you have the Tennessee Department of Education, which they're two separate entities. We've talked to the Charter Commission. We have not talked to the Department of Education. So we meet with the Department of Education on Thursday to figure out how are they actually taking these funds. Are they funds that we budget and move up front? Are they taken away from our TISA funds? We don't know those answers yet.
I have a question.
Yep.
So in the charter schools, if at the end of the year, the enrollment numbers don't come close to what the projection, do we get that money back?
There's supposed to be a true up, yes.
There's supposed to be a true up?
Yeah, that's what they call it, a true up, yes.
Okay. Like how quickly do we get the funds? Or do we have to wait forever?
We have to wait from the State Department. So I would not anticipate to have it before the end of the fiscal year.
I'm sorry?
I would not anticipate having it by the end of the fiscal year.
Okay.
Dr. Sullivan, can I ask I'm trying to make sure I understand the whole funding of the charter school thing.
We are too.
If we have a student that currently today is in one of our regular public schools, that next year will be in a charter school, we will be getting the funding for that student through TISA because they're a year behind, correct?
Correct.
So we will only be, I'm going to say, fronting the money for students that are new to the county in and of itself. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Which is traditional. We always have to front it. The other part that is a little bit frustrating is that we have students who are going to come from homeschool, private school, Murfreesboro City schools, that this is their enrollment, and because we're the LEA, the county LEA, we front that. And so we've had a conversation with the city schools that didn't really go anywhere, and so we have to front them because we are the LEA, and that's the way it's written in Tennessee Code Annotated, is the geographical LEA. And so we are the geographical LEA. Lucky us.
We don't really keep the fund, well, in that scenario, for the kid that's still here this year, the funding in the sense because of the year before. But if they get enrolled in the charter school, they get added to the enrollment for the charter school, and we have to upfront the cost for the kid that's there in the enrollment. So we really are going to be negative at that point.
The part that is most probably concerning to me is that, and I'm going to try to stay very hard out of the political realm. So in looking at the enrollment, we had a conversation with the Charter Commission. Was it Friday, Dr. Chastain? Was it Thursday, Friday? Friday. When we met with them, we were under the impression that Rutherford Collegiate Prep was going to open with how many students? 250, roughly. And so instead, they are operating with 760 and they've actually been approved to 965. My concern there is if 965 students leave our school system, we will not be eligible for fast growth funding next year. And so that is a huge, I mean, yes, you have the operational cost that you will save, but if we're still averaging 1,000 to 1,500 kids a year, it's almost like it's a wash, but we won't have that percentage because those students won't count as our school system. And so you have that additional 5 million, and then you have the additional fast growth, and so it could be 12 to 13 million that we've had this year that we don't have next year.
So even if we're the authorizer, they kind of count against us.
To some degree. The other part that you guys will not see is that if they are a charter school, they actually get an additional 5%, and so that is not part of this number. TISA gives charter school students an additional 5%. That was originally from the charter school capital project grant. I can't remember the exact wording for it, but if you look at the TISA outcome or the TISA base funding, it has additional, if you're a charter student, you get 5%. And so those are questions we have to ask the department. We have absolutely no idea how that is funded for us. And one of our biggest, of course, the financial issue is huge. The part that is the other big concern is that we are the largest district that is audited by the comptroller's office, and we want to make sure we get it right so that we don't get an audit finding over something that wasn't our fault. The other districts that have charter schools are audited by a third party, and that is by private vendors, and that is perfectly allowable. We are the largest one the comptroller still decides to audit. So congratulations, we've mentioned that before, but if you're just watching, didn't know that, we are the largest group the Tennessee comptroller audits. So we get the prize and the trophy for that.
So in the middle of April, I ran into Chairman Mark White and had a discussion about the funding for the charter schools. He was unaware of that, so I think that's something that we need to get back in front of him again and say, here's how it is, because they didn't want to open up TISA. Ms. Rosales has talked about that. They don't want to open it up, but we know that there's already issues with it, so we need to get in front of them now and talk to them about it. So when they do open it up and fix some things, because they're eventually going to have to tweak it, and they said that they would. They told us that they would. We need to have that on the map with them and up front and center with them.
Can I ask, back up for just a second, when you were talking about the 965 students, that's through the state authorized charter, is that correct?
Correct.
So, okay, because Ms. Maxwell mentioned even if we're the authorizer, but we are not the authorizer.
We're
for
not
that
the
charter.
authorizer.
That's,
So that's different. I just wanted to make sure that was,
It's different, but we still, that's the part we don't know. Are we considered the pass-through? On the form they sent us, it still had a local contribution of $2 million. And so we're confused on, do we have to upfront that $2 million? Are they going to take that $2 million out of TISA, out of our contributions for the students we already had? And that's why it's included. So that 5.3 is truly if, I think I sent you all the spreadsheet that has the 3 schools and their enrollment. And if you add local and state for the 2 that are ours, and then the local contribution for Rutherford Collegiate Prep, that's where that exact number comes from.
okay.
No matter how you look at this, is no wash. There's still cost here that's hidden. That's the reason I've always fought charter school. It has nothing to do with parents' rights or anything like that. This money is being taken from the local taxpayers and being used by something we have no control over. There's $5 million here that no taxpayer in Rutherford County has any say-so. And that's the issue. Plus, we're having to add additional people, our central office, to monitor all this. We could use those people to do another thing.
I do believe it's going to be discussed at Health and as part of our budget. So I think I'm going to have some fun questions to have to answer. So just want y'all to be prepared for that.
Ms. Braden? Yes. I agree with what Ms. Sharp had said. I don't know how much of our state is aware of this, because I talked to Dawn White about it as well, and she was going to look into it. So maybe awareness would increase, because it does seem a little backwards.
Well, we've been trying to bring that up now for 2.5 years, so the more people get on the bandwagon, the better we're off. But I'm still confused about this whole funding thing, but I'll talk to y'all about it.
And hopefully I'll have some more answers after Thursday too. I mean, we tried to meet with the State Department last week, but they were hosting, what do they call them,
Spring fiscal workshop.
spring fiscal workshop. So the soonest we could get with them was Thursday. So hopefully I have an update on Thursday. Oh, we asked for last week, but this Thursday is the first available they had. Yep. And if we have a connection, Brian used to work there, so we have a connection to get the first available, and that was our first available.
Well, thank you, Brian.
So that matches your number of revenue of 141 of 543 million, and again, our expenses 543 million, revenue of 538. Thank you all for staying with me. I know that's a long one. We're ready to move to 143? 143, I will not spend a lot of time. We discussed this at our last board meeting, and so these numbers are exactly the same. 143 has a revenue of $28,823. And you'll see, we hear a lot of times, where does your revenue come from? Our revenue comes from $6 million in lunch payments for children, $14 million in USDA reimbursements. And then USDA commodities is 1.9, breakfast is 2.9, and the other USDA fresh fruit and vegetables is 1.6. So it is self-funded by lunch payments and USDA reimbursements. And then your expenditures are actually looking at, and let me get to the actual expenditure portion. So the next one just shows what our fund balance is for this current and the last couple years. If you'll scroll on down to the next one, which shows expenditures, shows page 1 of 3. Audit services, which is under Board of Education. We have 2 people in supervisor director, cafeteria personnel, so our elementary cafeteria monitors and our cafeteria staff are here in this line. And you'll see food supplies, and just shows you how much inflation has hit over the last couple of years, 8.3 to 13 million to 14 million. And overall, we are requesting for this account to go 4 million into fund balance. We discussed this last year. This account is self-sustaining. We are supposed to keep about a 6-month fund balance, and we are well over a 6-month fund balance. So we have been trying to spend this down the last couple years, and we are not being successful in trying to spend it down as quickly as possible. So you'll see that this year we tried to spend 3 million. We've only been able to spend 1.7 due to whether it's supply chain, the ability to get into schools and do work at different times because the school's operating. We're trying to spend this one down as much as possible.
Dr. Ron,
Yep.
where's bad mail debt at? Is it not in this account? I don't see it.
No, it is not in this account. It is in this account. Revenue, can you find out exactly how much it is? I know it's over 7 now.
6,
Oh, is it not?
40.
It's always,
It was 640,000 last week.
I thought we were budgeting for it because we didn't have them. That's the budget in the past.
We cannot budget for it in 143. That's federal money. It has to come out of 141.
Oh, okay.
Yep, so at the end of the year, when we have local funding left over, I go back and we take it out of here.
Okay.
Yep. It's very frustrating that that account is making money, but we can't use that account to pay for it.
I thought we were having to budget it.
All right, last one we're going to look at is 177, and this is some good news. And keep in mind, 177 is not a required fund. So this is one that was set up by Commissioner Bullen, I don't know how many decades ago, but it started as a nickel. A couple years ago, we added an additional 5 or 6 pennies to it. And so what it has done over the last couple years is continues to build. This is one that we use for deferred maintenance, unfortunately, in capital projects. Unfortunately, at the exact same time that we added funding was the exact same time that inflation hit, and the additional projects just became astronomical, such as HVAC, to be able to take care of. So some good news from what you saw 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, this was sitting at 10 pennies. Michael Smith is the county finance director. County finance director is requesting us to move 1.9 pennies from Fund 141 And so what that does is adds over $2 million extra to this fund, and it basically covers what we talked about a couple weeks ago. Is if you look at schools' facility tax and development tax, that is now collected on the certificate of occupancy and no longer on pulling a permit. And so we had to readjust. This year we are anticipating 2.4 million. And we were asked to reduce that to 750,000 due to the collection. And so this basically goes back and puts that money back into it. And so greatly appreciate Michael proposing that to the county commission. The county commission, again, this is one that they could pull at any time that we advocate to keep. I do envision as we start moving forward trying to get funding for a middle and a high school, there will either have to be an additional revenue through an impact fee, property tax increase, or this fund will have to be used for middle and high school. I mean, those are you have to have additional revenue to have a middle and a high school. And those are definite needs for us. And so those will be conversations we have over the next year, year and a half, 2 years. I was asked today, can you wait 2 years for a high school? And I said, no. I'm like, no. Just so everyone knows our timeline, we will plan to go for Laverne for that addition in July, August, sometime for the design fees for the middle school at the same time, and then ask for the middle school in December, January, and then a year from now, or a year from January, ask for the high school. And so that's kind of our timeline, and those are the timelines I planned on us hoping to stick with. And just to kind of repeat that, July is what we're looking at for Laverne, July, August. Looking at July, August for design fees for the middle school at the Beatty property at Poplar Hill, and then going and asking for the funding for that in December or January, and then asking for the high school the next December, January. And so that's kind of what our aggressive building program is, and talk to the county and finance director, talk to the mayor.
25, 26 for the new high school? Was that the year?
The funding, yes, which means it would open 27, 28. We will ask for that in January of 26. And our county commission's been great. We've worked with Ways so far over the last 14 months. I think it needs to be said. We have together, and I think it's together because the school board's put a lot of money into it. We have funded 3 high school additions, various property renovations, and elementary school. And so it's over $210 million that has been funded. And so it's been a huge investment that just needs to continue. All right, any questions budget-wise? I know that was just amazingly exhilarating.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Yep.
We appreciate you and Ron and the rest of
Yes.
the staff have done to get this budget down. It's just something that we can present to the county commission. I know you've worked weekends, many hours, and
Since December,
we
right,
as
Brian?
a board appreciate all the time that
I don't know.
Number two?
So I did number 1. Oh yeah, you need the mouse back, sorry. I did number 1, I did number 2, and I did number 3 kind of all together. If you, number 4 is Fund 141 budget amendment. So let's kind of refocus. We've talked about next year's budget. Let's go back to this year's budget. Fund 141 budget amendments. This amendment is to increase Fund 141 budget revenues and expenditures in the amount of $5,556,938 to recognize the awarded summer camp grant for fiscal year 23-24. Just some background. On January 22nd, 2021, Tennessee General Assembly enacted the Tennessee Learning Loss Remediation and Student Acceleration Act to address the learning loss of students due to COVID-19 related school closures. Through this law, all school districts were required to offer learning loss remediation programs for students in Rising K-8 starting in summer 2021. Provisions of this law were set to expire in summer of 23, included summer learning camps for rising grades 1 through 3 and after school for learning mini camps, stream camps. However, last year in the legislative session, the Tennessee General Assembly amended the act to continue summer programming and learning loss bridge camps for rising grades K through 9 annually. These funds are used to fund summer work for principals, teachers, educational assistants, secretaries, and there is no local match funded for this grant. It also includes transportation for summer funds. Number 5 is strictly just a budget function. It really doesn't involve anything outside of being a budget function. Last year, we had an audit finding for having fund balance outside of what it needed to be in Fund 177, even though there was plenty of revenue in it there. So this is just cleaning up a budget function. Each July 1st, outstanding purchase orders in this fund are liquidated. The funds roll into the fund balance, which in this fund is $34,685 committed for capital projects. These purchase orders are projects that were not finished by June 30th. Amendment 1 took these funds out of $34,685 committed for capital projects and rebudgeted the expenditures for the carryover projects that were approved in the previous year but haven't been completed. Due to accounting procedures set forth by the Tennessee Comptroller's Office, the amendment reverses Amendment Number 1 to bring the budgeted amounts in balance and not over budget. Moving one
Questions?
line. Yeah, I know that seems kind of ridiculous, but it is what it is.
Okay. Number 6.
Number 6, if you attended our retirement reception, you noticed that we had quite a few retirements out of our finance office, and so this is something that allows us to kind of revamp our accounting office, but also be able to keep a couple of our employees under 100-day contracts. So this is a new job description for an accounting supervisor. The Budget Finance Department is requesting the approval of a new job description, accounting supervisor to lead our accountants, accounts payable clerks, and school support staff. As personnel, students, finance department, and volume of work continues to increase, this position will provide support and leadership to the accounting team. You'll see it is we budgeted through general purpose funds in 23-24 and is budgeted for 24-25.
Questions? Comments? Thank you. Transportation.
This is we talked about this last month, upgrade bus GPS to Samsara GPS at a cost of $117,192 for installation and hardware. Recurring licensing of $63,611 beginning with the second year. Funding is currently available, and Samsara GPS is compatible with our current Edulog routing system. Just so that everyone knows, I emailed the board yesterday kind of what my suggestions are. I know there's been a lot of conversation around this, but really for 3 reasons. One being parent communication. This is something I absolutely feel like is vital. Second, financial. When we look at our contract, there are, whether they're deadhead miles or miles that we have to pay extra, it is a financial benefit to be able to see the miles that are driven. In the contract, I believe it says that the daily rate is set on a 50-mile minimum, just so that as this is out in the world, we don't plan on ever going back and requesting to somebody to pay if they didn't drive the miles that were in the contract. But the biggest reason is for safety and liability. I mentioned earlier we have a lawsuit currently that was an unfortunate tragedy that occurred, and one of the very first things that happened was we had our GPS pulled to see where was the bus, were the bus doors open. We also had an incident that I think the board will remember. We had a parent last year that accused a bus of driving into the ditch and kids being on the bus when the bus drove into the ditch, and we were able to go back in GPS and see it happen when kids were on the bus and what time, which was opposite what was stated originally, and we used GPS to be able to show those type of things. So I know it's not a fun conversation we've had, but from a safety standpoint, I could not imagine operating without updated GPS.
Questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
I just want to bring these questions so that we can have some responses to it. And I did get this email from our bus contractor, and I agree, we do need something to help with our parents to know where buses are and for transportation and things like jazz. But there's some questions that there's still some concerns about, and I just want to make sure that we bring them out and have time for at least to answer them. So one of the concerns is that because there was a comment that was made by Mr. Lee about the installation, that it couldn't be shown due to a temporary installation. Can you clarify that, if you don't mind?
It's my understanding that question is based on the 4 contractors that were piloting this GPS for us. They're wanting to see that installation. Those contractors are not comfortable with that. It was a temporary situation where we were piloting it. It was not done permanently. The intent for this is to take out the GPS that's there now, utilize the current wiring if possible, and put the new GPS in its place.
Okay. Yeah, I think it has a lot of the questions is around the installation side of it and what is being reported in the live scenario, that it could be a possibility of having a breach of contract with the GPS because of the function ability to report more information than required. And so I would like to see if we can get legal to speak into this, if this is a breach of contract.
It is not. We're going to be receiving the same data that we're receiving currently, nothing more.
Okay. The other.
And Ms. Rosales, I would also like to point out a breach of contract can go both ways because this is in the contract, it's allowable. Right?
Okay. Well, I'm just reading the message. I'm just trying to get everyone to feel like they're being heard.
Madam Chair, is it possible to ask a follow-up question to Ms. Rosales before we move on to another subject?
Sure, yeah.
Is it possible, because I think part of what she's referring to, we all received the same email, I believe. Is there any kind of video or a way for a contractor to see how the pilots look like so that they can verify the data that is being shown? I think that was some of the concern, was some of them wanted to be able to see what it looked like and what data it was transmitting.
It's the same data we have. If they would like to make an appointment with Miss Barnett to come in and look at the GPS data, we'll be glad to show it to them.
Okay, thank you.
Can that happen before Thursday?
As far as I'm concerned, it can.
Before Thursday. Okay, perfect. Also, the process of repairs. There is a concern about that it could also be a part of a breach of contract and having to go through a third party. That is a responsibility for them to reach out for the third party for the repairs. Can you please speak into that?
They don't reach out to third party for repairs. Any repairs any repair they deem unsatisfactory, they reach out to Wanda in the Transportation Department, and we'll take care of it. Same as it is now.
Okay. So there's still I feel like there's still some concerns on that in the repairs. So
there was some concern last time. I think Mr. Young brought it up that there was some folks that said they had damage to their bus, and it was brought up. We've had one person that has reached out to us since that meeting and we've taken care of that bus to get it repaired.
Okay. Well, that's good that you guys took care of that. Okay, so I wish we can ask, I don't know, I know they're not, I know this may be, yeah. That's okay. I just want to make sure that we get the right questions answered and the follow-up so that we can tackle that whole issue with feeling like with the repairs, because that's been a lot of the concerns around.
Like I said, we've had one contractor that has reached out with an issue on repairs. We're addressing those issues.
And I know that you and I, we talked about this on the phone, and that you are aware that this is a concern, and that you've shared with me that you are going to be working.
We're going to, if there's an issue, we've required this contractor is going to take pictures prior to installation and pictures after installation. And if the contractor is still not happy, they can reach out to us and we will address it.
Okay.
I don't know how more simple I can make it.
Right.
Mr. Young brought it up. You all brought it up. They brought it up in open conversation. We gave this information out to all the contractors. We sent it out in an email. We made it available the day they picked up their checks. We did have one contractor that had a few questions for Wanda. She answered those questions.
Okay.
And just to be clear, I mean, the reason we're going to this system is because we're kind of forced to, right? Verizon no longer supports this. We have
two reasons. Currently, we're using G4.
Yeah.
They are not reliable, and they're not sustainable. It's costing us a lot of money, and they don't work, and we're having trouble getting parts.
Like
we're
20%.
upgrading to achieve better service and to attain the same information that we're getting now. Now, are there other things available that we could get? Yes, but we're not getting them. We're not going to ask for them. Anything above and beyond the information we are gathering now would require us to come back before the board to ask for additional information. There is additional technology out there that we could utilize, but we're not asking you to do that at this time.
And the failure rate, I think you mentioned before, is 20%, is that right?
Basically, we have 321 buses right now, and I've got 60 plus that are down right now.
Gotcha.
Had another one today.
In case anyone cares, I'll just tell y'all, I did contact Samsura, and I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, and I did verify with them that the way that these will be installed, it will not transmit the data that some of the contractors are worried about, and that is what I was told by the company's personnel themselves. I do have a question, Mr. Lee. I was told that like Stewart's Creek has a old school bus, a black school bus painted in their colors that they utilize, I would assume, for sports activities and things. I think activity bus maybe. Do the activity buses in the district have the same equipment?
Currently, they do not.
Does this amount include those getting that equipment?
Currently, it does not.
Can I ask why?
We don't, they use those strictly for student transport for special activities. So the transportation department does not track those buses. We don't utilize that information. Most of those buses are running after school is out, so there's no one here to monitor the bus. Now, if you all want to put them on there, we'll be glad to do it.
Well, when we talk about student safety, if an accident were to occur or anything of that nature, I would think it would be just as vital to have it on those buses as well.
Never been brought up before. Good idea.
Be glad to.
Can we find out how much extra it would be to include, I don't know how many activity buses we have,
70.
but.
We have 70. It wouldn't take, but I can have the information probably for you tomorrow morning.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
That's a good idea.
Miss, sorry, I have one more question.
Go right ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Bratton. Can you please go over what we're tracking now and what will be the same?
Speed, location, whether the bus is moving, stop, and if the door's open or not.
And I know the last time we were talking about this, that was the parent app where it could be tracked or something, and I think you said that we're not going to have that.
Anything beyond what I just said, we will come back here for official authorization. Other districts do utilize it, and we have the capability to do so, but at this current time, we are not asking to do that.
And you just said now that if they want to go and see the live scenario, they can make an appointment with you. And they
With Wanda.
With Wanda, not with you, but with Wanda to see the live scenario.
Sure. It's not live now, but it's recorded. They can see the time frames in which we watched it.
Right.
Or we have it. It stays recorded for a couple weeks.
Okay. But they can go
Sure.
by Thursday.
They'll see the same screen they see now.
Okay. Well, good.
That was speed, door open, and location. Was there one more in there? Speed?
Whether it's stopped or not, I mean, that's it. We can gain additional information if we wanted to, but we would have to come back here to tell you we're asking for it. All we're doing is doing the same thing we're doing now. No more, no less.
Thank you. Number 13.
Number 13 is an update to Stewartsboro and Browns Chapel zoning. So this is tab 5. This is a continuation of the enrollment cap at Stewarts Creek Elementary. That was previously approved by the board, I believe, in August of 2023. And so this is just an update. Due to overcrowding at Stewarts Creek Elementary and the subsequent use of space at Stewartsboro Elementary for the enrollment cap during 23-24, Browns Chapel will serve as a school for all new students moving in the Stewarts Creek Elementary zone for the 24-25 school year. So if a Family moved in from, I think it was October 1st to now. They went to Stewartsboro instead of Stewarts Creek next year, unless they have a sibling at that school, and then we'll work with them if they have a sibling. Then they will go to Browns Chapel instead.
Yeah, Georgeboro, I was talking to.
It's full.
And.
It is full.
It is full, yeah, for sure.
And I sent you guys a couple weeks ago an enrollment report on Browns Chapel. That enrollment report was wrong. It has 800 students in it. So it showed 6 something, and it's over 800. I'll have a new
800.
staffing report tomorrow.
At Browns Chapel? Okay. Any other questions? 14? Number 1?
Number 1, 2, and 3, if you all are okay, I'll just kind of talk about them together. So these are contract agreements for Blackman High School, Eagleville High School, and Siegel High School. That's a new school. That's a new one. For MTSU, proposes to pay $5,000 per year for 5 years. Contract terms are July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2029, and I expect to see more schools upcoming. I also want to bring up, I had a great meeting with Dr. McPhee. A couple weeks ago, he invited me, and I didn't know what it was going to be about, and it was very much he came from a education background, and I did not realize that. Public school educated, the only one in his family, and really was apologetic for the lack of focus that MTSU has put on the College of Education, and really talked about the need to be a partner with us. And we talked about we need to be an even partner with Murfreesboro City, if not an expanded partner. We are a larger district, and if they can't fulfill our needs, we'll go somewhere else. And so he was, I'd never met with him for more than a couple minutes, and it was a good 45-minute conversation, and very much very impressed, and I appreciate that sentiment.
And I think that is very uplifting, because we've sort of tracked away from our alma mater, and it's very important. That university is very important. No more important than we are, though. So we need to be good stewards and good partners.
Can I ask one question about, I know we have approved these banners and these $5,000. Are they currently doing these at the rest of the high schools, or do they expire and they just move on to the next batch of schools?
Monica, do you happen to know what high schools will come next on this agreement? I can get an update by Thursday to see which ones are next.
I know they've done it for Riverdale, because that was like the second year I was on
it
here.
rotates through, and I'll have to figure out
Rotates
where
through.
we are.
Okay, so they're not currently doing them at all of the schools at the same time. Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
Yes.
I'm glad that you had a good conversation with him, because everybody always asks us, why don't we do more? And then there's always the subject of graduation
I did not bring up graduation.
and how much they charge us. So I don't want to undo anything, but I think these prices are low compared to what they charge us for our graduation.
Agreed.
So I'd like to see a wash in that if we could.
That would be lovely. Number 15, engineering and construction.
So, Mr. Reed, if you want to come up on this one, I know you dealt with this one. So this is Stewarts Creek Road property. So discussions have been underway for several months with the Brewer family for the purchase of a parcel consisting of approximately 112 acres on Stewart Creek Road. A contract's been negotiated for the purchase of the property at $56,612 per acre. Contract provides for a 180-day inspection period with the right to 2 extensions of 60 days each. During this inspection period, survey, environmental testing, geotechnical testing, soils testing, and other testing would be undertaken to determine if the property is suitable for a school site. The site does appear to have soil sufficient to support a school septic system, but the site would require road improvements. The board can terminate the contract at any time prior to the expiration of the inspection period. Contract's contingent upon final approval by the board to proceed with the purchase after the test results are in, and is also contingent upon funding approval by the Rutherford County Commission. Couple aspects here. You'll see the motion is a little bit strange. It says to accept the contract as presented or reject the contract due to lack of funding and a greater need for land further north. We had talked originally when this came up, probably back in the fall is how long it's been, about possibly purchasing both. We've had different costs since then, and I think that's still something that the board wants to. We have said before, it's not our job to fund, it's our job to ask, and if that's something that the board wants, I have no problem asking. I do know that as far as we are very far into property tax rates, and so this would have to come out of fund balance somewhere. And those are things that we absolutely can look at doing, but those are just conversations that we need to have. I definitely think it's a piece of property that is very beneficial to us long-term, But as far as, I would much rather have land further north if this is going to be our high school, because this is pretty much middle Rutherford County, and we need land further north for a high school. So I don't believe this is the land for the North High School, but if it's one that we want to hold on to and build eventually on, I think that's a different discussion. So that's the reason for my weird motion.
Mr. Reed?
Just let me interject there that this is property we've looked at for some time. You know, we got really two prospective sites we're looking at seriously now about pursuing. You have the Lee Road property site, and you have this one as well. We don't know exactly how the Lee Road deal will shake out yet. I can't tell you we will be able to get that property for sure, or whether a deal will be struck. But we're still having discussions with the family members, and that's ongoing. And hopefully we'll have more of an understanding of where that lies for the next few weeks on it. But the Brewer families have been willing to sell this property to the school board, and after months of negotiation, we came to a price which they were agreeable to sell the property at $56,612 an acre. So, so it's somewhat within the realm of reason from a price standpoint. The soils on the site are good, so it would support one or two schools on the property. The big hurdle with respect to Brewer property are the roads are not good, and it would be required that we would have to do pretty major road work to be able to have those roads sufficient to bring buses up and down those roads to get to the school site. There's a lot of development going on in this area of the county right now that will continue to progress, I would expect, over the next few years. There are plans for sewer to be extended to this property now within 5 years by the town of Smyrna. So as that gets extended on, this area is going to continue to blow up. So the price of the property over time could be expected to increase significantly over what the prices are being quoted to us today for. So over time, some of the road improvements that are necessary on that road will likely be taken care of by other developments coming in before we do our development. So if you bought it as a long-term hold, you could let other developers do their thing in the area, and you've got this property in place for a school when you need it at maybe a better price now than you would have to be able to get it later on for, even if it's still available at that point. So once sewer gets extended to this property, it's probably unlikely, unless we jump on it, I'm not sure that we would be able to get it, because there'll probably be developers who want to get the property at that point. So as a question, if we had an unlimited amount of funds, I say for sure buy both and try to pursue both of them. But the funding in this probably would have to come from bond issuance, and that we'd have to do, if we're able to get the Lead Road property, then we'd have to do a bond issuance for that as well. So perhaps they'd be rolled into the same bond funding at that point. That'll be up to the county commission to approve, and you guys to approve. So if we want to pursue this for now and keep this property progressing forward as a potential site for us, we probably do need to go ahead and tie it up and put it under contract. It doesn't mean we have to close on it right away. We have a 180-day inspection period on this. We would have 2 30-day extensions on it, and then 30 days to close. We would have to undertake the normal topographical studies, surveys, environmental studies, wetland type studies, geotech, all that type of work to determine whether or not this property is suitable for a school site or not. That takes us a number of months, as you've seen, with respect to the Beatty property. So we will be eating up a good bit of the 180 days just doing the testing that we would have to undertake to determine if this is actually a suitable site for a school. So again, in the event something is turned up on the property and it's not suitable for our use, or we get an estimate on the road cost and we decide that we do want to go ahead and build on it now, the road costs are too high, we are not obligated to close on the property. Those are all things that will be brought back to you for you as a board to ultimately determine whether or not this is suitable for a school site and this is the one you want to pursue or not. So the contract you got presented with you on Thursday night will be a 180-day inspection period, 2 extensions on top of that of 60 days each. And there's no obligation to close unless you choose later on to close on the property. And this is further contingent on county commission approval for funding. So you would have to have county commission approval for funding to pursue buying this property. So that's that will be before you Thursday night. On the League Road property, I would hope to know something maybe within 4 or 5 weeks on that, where we stand better. I know there are some meetings scheduled with the family members trying to resolve the questions they've got to get worked out among them, and we should have some more direction from them in the next several weeks.
Questions?
I know this is out of the ordinary, but is there an appetite for a lease purchase agreement on this property?
I have not talked to them about a lease purchase. I don't know that these are younger family members involved here, so I don't know that a lease purchase would be really feasible for them to do, because I'm sure they just want to sell it and get cashed out on it.
It would save them some money on taxes.
I understand there's different reasons.
And it would secure the
I like the way you're thinking. I like the way you're thinking out of the box, but those are things that we should look at doing when we can do them. I'm not
Have
sure
they
a
been
lease
asked?
purchase would work in this situation.
Okay.
Anyone else? Thank you so much, Mr. Reed. Number 2.
Number 2 is request for basketball lockers at Rocky Fork Middle. Principal Jennifer Clark is requesting to remove the lockers originally provided with the school and replace them with custom-built lockers. Cost will not exceed $5,000. We paid for it from the basketball account. Engineering Construction has reviewed the request and has no objection, and this is very common. I think this will probably be every middle school. I was a basketball coach in this county, and they were there at Blackman Middle when I was there 15 years ago.
I didn't put those lockers in those schools.
When we discussed...
And I said, what in the world are you talking about? And he said, oh, they do that. And I went,
Yeah, she was not happy, but it's
I was
been
not
going on for a long time.
happy, no.
The parents in the school pay for it.
but that's right. If they pay for it, it's their choice. Number 2? No. Oh, yes, sir.
Oh, yeah, we usually do. We
Yeah.
repurpose them.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of times they move towards some of our structured setting rooms as well.
Most of them end up
can be
either in the gym or in the football locker room as
Extra.
just extras. But no, we don't throw them.
Absolutely not.
Don't throw them away.
And they loved them in that hall. They loved a locker. They wanted to put their stuff in there. They wanted to get their lock, and that was a big deal. So they will be
I
used.
put nice lockers in there, Mr. Young. They just weren't in the basketball area. Okay, number 3.
Continuing with the basketball theme, request for outside basketball goals at Buchanan Elementary. Principal Ashley Whitney is requested to install 2 exterior basketball goals for use by gym classes. The cost for all materials will be covered by the school, and donations will not exceed $200. The maintenance department will assist with labor for installation only. Engineering Construction has reviewed the request and has no objection. And just so anybody watching knows, anything that involves facility improvements has to go before the board. I know it may seem crazy for $200, but anything facility improvement has to go before the board.
Questions?
A lot of times it's not necessarily the monetary value, it's the fact that the board is aware that we're making an alteration to the campus so that they're aware.
Number 4.
Request for Blackman Middle baseball cost increase. Principal Dr. Jessica Jackson is requesting to increase the cost for the baseball turf project previously approved on November 9th, 2023. Original contractors withdrawn their bid and have secured an additional bid. The new bid is $13,360. Additional funds will be covered by the same account. Engineering and Construction has reviewed the request and has no objection.
Questions? Comments? Number 5.
And request for HVAC at Siegel Middle Baseball Building. Principal Kim Stoker is requested to install an HVAC system for baseball building. The cost will be $12,000, and funds will come from the baseball account. Engineering Construction has reviewed the request and has no objection.
Questions on that? Number 16, insurance.
No update on percentage of increase yet.
Did you say there would not be an increase?
I would love for that to happen, but there's not an update yet.
Oh, okay.
We're
I
thinking
just
that
couldn't
that might
hear you.
happen at the end of the
Obviously,
month
I'm
or
deaf. I'm
the
so
beginning
sorry.
of next month. That would be lovely.
That would be lovely.
I like
Thank you.
that.
Number 17, director's update.
You want me to go back over 141 again?
No, I do
No,
not.
that's okay.
We're
I
good.
think I've talked enough tonight.
We're good.
Number 18 and 19, you're going to just update us on Thursday, if there's anything to update us on Thursday. General discussion. Ms. Sharp.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan, for the budget. And I know you try to cut positions and everything where you can, and I think we have been good stewards. But is there a position somewhere that you would add that we have not thought of?
I think anything that, we've mentioned it beforehand, eventually Trey's department's going to get to the point, I don't know if that department's there yet. Trey oversees about a bazillion different things.
I don't know how he, I don't.
Yeah.
We don't know how you do it.
We're stretched as thin as we can go. We were conservative this year. We asked for 6. We got
Getting
2.
two. Yep.
We got 2 in maintenance. The technology, the 3 that came over from ESSER this year for technology, we've got so many devices and so many students now. Basically, you have a tech that's covering between 2 and 3 schools. We fixed it now where we have at least 1 tech that's at every high school every day. It just, you got 2,000 devices.
Are we giving supplements? Is that, okay.
So there's things like that in the coming future, we're not going to be able to continue to sacrifice because we just don't have the personnel to cover it.
And I also think, he wouldn't say it, but I think Trey's going to need somebody. Trey has to oversee transportation, especially with our additional projects that if we're continuing to build like we are, it's an area with transportation, construction, school nutrition. I always forget you have school nutrition. We call Trey school support, and he truly has everything that does not involve, as we kind of joke around, if you come into our central office, if you look right, that's where the teaching and learning does not occur. That's where we're operating the house. And if you go left, unless you go to the next building, that is all instruction. And Trey pretty much has everything in the entire other building, all by himself over there.
Anyone else?
Dr. Sullivan?
Yep.
So we received all these emails.
Yes. Yep.
Can you please address that? Because
Yeah,
I'm still getting emails coming through.
So we had a student last week, and I won't go into what school just for confidentiality, that was requesting and questioning about attendance and how days are excused. And so if a student has a religious absence, then it is an excused absence. But when we are doing our accounting codes, we cannot waive that day as a school day. And so that is something that we excuse the absence as long, especially if it's within reason. We're not going to question those things. And if something's out of line and it's 140 out of 200 days they're religious, there's a different avenue that we need to look at. But we are following back up with the school that we believe it is to make sure, and I believe that was resolved last week, and this is just a follow-up, and so that has been addressed, but we will make sure again it is being addressed.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
I did reach out to a couple people from their emails, and then also found some phone numbers of them. So, and I asked them to return our phone calls so we can know exactly, at that time, we didn't know exactly where it was coming from, so. People as far away as Old Hickory were.
They sure were. There weren't a lot of Rutherford County
Yeah,
contacts.
that
It was
was,
strange.
Yeah.
Yep.
Ms. Sharp and I commented on, wait a minute here.
I thought we were
don't
going back down the
understand.
deal we dealt with in March, and I didn't want to go
No.
there.
No, okay. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Teacher Appreciation Week, and we are sporting some nice decor tonight. Everybody's got a little support going on there, so we just want to let our teachers know that if those that have tuned in for the last 2 hours, that we appreciate you,
Riveting stuff here.
and you are dedicated.
Still tuned in.
If you're still listening at this point.
If you are still
appreciate
listening,
We will be wearing school attire again, supporting our teachers during this week. We delivered 200 cakes on Monday. We had a lot of fun. Chris Reed, Mr. Reed's brother from Kroger on Veterans Parkway, has helped us to donate those, and we picked them up, and we went out. Most of us were out till about 12 o'clock, taking in. But the teachers were so happy. The cakes must be great. They kept saying, oh, these are so good. So we got those delivered. Thank you, Ms. Sharp, for helping us. And I hope you ate your Werthers at the bottom of your packet that I put in there for you. So we
Yesterday
had
was a
that.
little bit of a stressful day, and I can't tell you how many times they came in and I was just eating icing, and they're like, you need to stop. I think Brian.
But it went well. Brian?
I have an answer to you, Ms. Darby, for your 72, 320, 309, the communications. It's basically where we pay the phone bill for the central office and then also the cell phones for the central office personnel.
Anyone else?
That's where AT&T, like our bill comes from? Wow. Yeah, that's right, I'm not allowed to talk about that. That's a contract issue, you're right. Yeah,
We're not talking about that.
no, we're not.
Anyone else? Ms. Darby?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned.